Hey guys, welcome to part 16 of the subdivision modeling training series for Cinema 4D. In this part, I'm going to show you how to reduce your geometry. So to illustrate this, I'm just going to start with a plane. Now you're welcome to follow along if you like, or you can just sit and watch. So I'm just going to leave the subdivision segments here at 20. That's going to be just fine for this example. I'm going to make it editable. And we've got quite a few subdivisions here. Now let's say that down on the far end, back over on this end, back over here, let's say we want to model in some type of hole. So I'm just going to select some of these polygons here. Okay, something like that. And then I'm just going to extrude those down. All right, so there's the holes. Now we need to drop this into a HyperNerve object. And there we go. So let me just pull this up a little bit, and I'm going to change the display. Okay, so that's given us the results that we want, but notice down here on the left side, there are way too many segments out here. Now, the only thing we modeled into this was the holes over here on the right-hand side, and we need those extra subdivisions provided by the HyperNerve in order to smooth that out to give us the results that we want. But we're not going to model anything down here on this end, so of course there's no reason to have all of those subdivisions. That's just a ridiculous amount, and if we had to model something into this, say maybe further down over here to the left, then that means we're going to have to deal with all of those edges, and that is a ridiculous amount of edges to have to deal with. There's simply no reason to have that many. So I'm going to show you how to reduce them down to a bare minimum. Okay, so now what we want to do is determine where do we want to start the reduction at, because obviously all of these subdivisions go all the way up to the hole, and then actually over here on the other side as well. But we need to determine where to start, because we don't want to start the reduction method too close to these holes. Otherwise, it's going to start to affect the shape of the hole, and we don't want to do that. But we also don't want to go too far away from the hole. Otherwise, there's going to be extra geometry there that it's really not going to cause a problem, but we still want to be efficient when we start to reduce the amount of these subdivisions. So I'm going to turn the HyperNerve off. And what we need to do is determine where we want to start. So I'm going to go into edge mode because we're mainly going to be working with edges. And we don't want to make any type of adjustments to these edges here, which are on the outside edge of the hole. We don't want to mess with those. And if possible, we also do not want to mess with the edges that are directly below that hole as well. So we don't want to mess with this row of edges right there. And we certainly don't want to touch any of the edges up here, otherwise we start to affect the shape of the hole. So I think for this, we should be able to get away with skipping this row here and just starting on this row down here. So let me orient the camera back over. Okay, so this is where we want to start here, but we don't want to mess with these edges that are running horizontally. We want to start on these vertical edges. So let me go to a top view and let me change the display mode. Okay, so there's the edge we want to start on right there, but we only want to start on the vertical rows of edges. So we can go through here and one by one we can select all of these edges. And that's just ridiculous. There's no reason to have to do this manually because there are quite a few vertical edges in here, and that's just going to take way too long. So a much faster way is just to use the path selection tool. So we want to hit U and then M. That will bring up the path selection tool for us. And the way this tool works is you'll take the cursor here and just hover over where a point would be at. Now I know we're not in point mode, but that's okay. Just hover over and you'll notice that there's a small highlighted dot there, and you just want to click and drag down. Notice that it is selecting a path for us. So now we'll just hold down Shift to select multiple paths, and now we can just click and drag up and down, and we can select all of these vertical edges a whole lot faster than we were doing a minute ago when we were trying to select them one by one manually. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to right click and we want to choose Stitch and Sew. Now the way this tool works is you highlight or select your edges, and then you can use this Stitch and Sew tool to combine those edges into one. Or basically what you're doing is you are welding your edges together. So we're going to start over here on the right hand side, and what we want to do is we want to take these first 3 rows that we have selected. So we've got 1, 2, 3, these first 3 vertical rows, and we want to take these outside edges and we want to weld them into the center one. So I'm just going to click where the point would be at. I'm just going to click and drag over. You can see that there's a white line there that's highlighting, and then release, and that will weld that edge over. Now we want to take this edge here and weld it over to the center there. Then we want to come over here and do the same thing with this one. We're just taking the 3 rows and welding the 2 outside rows into the middle one. So now we do the next 3. We'll take this one to the center and that one to the center one as well. Just like that. Now we kind of run into a little bit of a problem here because we've got this edge here, which there's no other edges to grab onto. So for right now, I'm just going to leave that edge alone. I'm not going to mess with it. We can always come back to that later and make the adjustment to it. Okay, now I'm sure that you can tell if you've been watching that we've got triangles now. And what we want to do is we want to reduce the geometry while staying in quads. So we'll come back in a minute to fix those issues. Right now, what I want to do is I want to take these horizontal edges and I want to get rid of those as well. Now there's 2 ways that you can do this. You can go into, let's see, point mode, and we can grab all of these points here and delete them, leaving just these up here. We can go into edge mode, select those edges, and then we can just extrude them down. Okay, now that's one way that you can do it. Or another way, and let me just undo this a couple times so we can get that back. Another way that may work for you if deleting all the geometry doesn't work is we can go, let's see, let's go back to the path selection. And I'm just going to select all of these horizontal edges. And again, I'm just holding down Shift to select multiple edges. All right, I'm going to use the Stitch and Sew tool. I'm going to take this one and I'm going to stitch it up to that one, and then these here can just be stitched down. So there are 2 methods there that you can use in order to alleviate the vertical, I'm sorry, not the vertical, but the horizontal edges. Okay, so already you can see that we have already started reducing the geometry quite a bit. So let's go back to the live selection tool. And up here, what we've got is an edge that is dividing the 2 triangles. So here what we have here is a triangle here and a triangle here. And in the middle of it, we have an edge. So what we need to do is select that edge. I'm just going to go through and select that edge that's dividing those 2 triangles. And I'm going to right click and choose dissolve. That will dissolve that for us. We're going to go into point mode. And what we want to do is we want to select the point that was at the top of that edge that we dissolved in the middle of those 2 triangles. Because what we've got here now is a quad. Now I know it looks like a triangle because we've got this triangle shape, but we've got 1, 2, 3, and then the 4th edge, and that's 4, which is actually a quad. Now, I'm not sure if Cinema 4D calculates this particular type of polygon as a quad or a triangle, because what we've got is 2 edges that are exactly in line with each other. So I'm not really sure if Cinema 4D will calculate this as a quad or a triangle. I don't know. I really haven't heard anyone talk about this subject in depth to actually know the answer to that. But what I do know is that I have a habit of kind of moving the point in order to break that line to get the diamond shape, or in this case, the quad shape. So I'm going to go through here. I'm going to select all of those points, and then I'm just going to move them up slightly to about right there. Just enough. You really don't even have to go too far. Now notice what happens when we go the opposite way we should. What we get is a degenerate poly. So if you ever end up with a polygon that turns black, what that means is the polygon needs to be adjusted, and more than likely you've got a point somewhere that needs to be moved. So we're just going to take those points and push them up slightly. Okay, now the next thing we need to do is reduce these vertical edges down here one step further. So what we're going to do is go over to edge mode, and what we need to do is introduce a horizontal cut. Now I know you're thinking, well, why do you want to introduce another cut? Aren't we trying to reduce them? Yes, that's true, we are, but I'm going to show you why we need to make a cut. So I'm going to grab the knife tool, and I'm going to deselect, restrict to selection, and mode we're going to leave at line. So I'm just going to make a cut up here at the top, and maybe about right there. So all the way across, make a cut there. And what we need to do now is go grab the path selection tool. Actually, we really don't even need to grab that. We can just grab the live selection and select all of those edges there. Now we want to grab the stitch and sew tool, and we want to take the first three and combine them into the center. And we want to do the same over here with that one. Now again, this edge over here gets left out, but that's okay. All right, so now we need to go back up here, and we need to dissolve the edge that's in the center of the two triangles again. So we'll select them and click dissolve. We'll go into point mode, and we need to select these points here again, and just to push them up to alleviate that straight edge between those two edges. Okay, so you can see what we've done. We've gone from a highly subdivided mesh over on this side down to just basically 3 vertical lines here, which is actually quite good. All right, so let's jump back to a perspective, and I'm just going to turn the hypernerve on just to see what this looks like. So we'll turn that on, and you can see what we've done here. We've got this very dense part of the mesh over here, which is serving its purpose because it's actually providing the smoothing that we need for all of these holes. But down over here on the left-hand side, you can see we barely have anything at all. All right, so let's see if we can fix the issue over here with this one edge that's off over here by itself. Go into edge mode. So it's going to be this edge right here. Now in this case, this is going to work out really well. Now it may be different for you. However, for this example that I'm providing here, this is going to work out pretty good because we've got 3 vertical edges. And what's the number of edges that we were using to weld? 3. The outside edges are being welded into the center one. So all we have to do is make one more horizontal cut. We need to deselect these edges up here above the cut. We can go back to the stitch and sew tool and then just stitch those together into the center one. Select that edge right there, dissolve it into point mode, and we'll just take that point and pull it up slightly. So there we go. We've taken what was actually a pretty dense mesh and we've dissolved it down to just this one edge. All right, so that's how you reduce your geometry. Hopefully this has given you an idea on how to reduce it. And just to quickly see exactly how much we reduced this by, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another plane with the same amount of subdivisions as the first one. And I'm going to make the same extrusions into it. All right, so what I'm going to do is Turn the hypernerb off. Now this plane over here that we made the adjustments to in the reduction, I'm going to go to Objects, Object Information. Now this one has total polygons of 165, whereas this one over here that has not been touched or reduced in any way, that one is 440. So you can see that we did reduce it quite a bit. So if we turn the hypernerb on, we'll click the hypernerb and we'll go Object, Object Information. This one is 2,805 polygons when the hypernerb is turned on. So we've got 2805. So we'll take this other plane that's been untouched, we'll drop that one in, and now we'll go back to the Object Information, and this one is now at 7,480. So you can see that we have reduced the amount of polygons actually quite substantially. All right, so that about wraps up this part. I just wanted to show you the method that I use sometimes to reduce the geometry on a mesh. I'm sure that some of you at some point or another are going to come across a model that you're going to be working on, and you're going to find that one area is going to be highly subdivided, and you're going to need to do something with all those extra edges. So this would be a method that you could use to reduce the geometry in the areas where it's not needed. All right, so again, thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you in the next tutorial.